When people hear the words dictator's wife, they often picture luxury and power. But being Saddam Hussein's wife was the complete opposite. The women married to him lived under rules no one could escape, and the closer he came to absolute power, the more their lives became a living nightmare that haunted them until the very end. Saddam's first wife, Sajida Kerala Talfa, was born in 1937 in Iraq into a strict Sunni Muslim family rooted in tribal customs. Her family belonged to the same extended clan as Saddam Hussein. In that world, tribal loyalty mattered more than personal choice, especially for girls. From early childhood, Sajida was raised to obey elders, accept decisions without question, and prepare for marriage as her main purpose in life. Education, independence, and personal freedom were not priorities for girls in her environment. Her marriage was decided long before she was old enough to understand what it meant. She was promised to her cousin, Saddam Hussein, while they were still children. This was common in rural Iraqi society at the time, especially among families who wanted to keep power and loyalty within the bloodline. Sajida had no say in the matter. Refusing was not an option. Saddam Hussein was born in the same year, 1937, in the small village of Al-Auja near Tikrit. His early life was harsh and unstable. His father died before he was born, and his mother reportedly rejected him for a time. Saddam grew up under the care of relatives who used physical punishment regularly. Violence was normal in his home. From a young age, he learned that fear brought control and that showing weakness invited abuse. As a teenager, Saddam was already drawn to power and aggression. He admired strong men and believed force was the only way to rise. By the 1950s, he was involved in street violence and political intimidation. He joined the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, which believed in rule through strength and absolute loyalty. Saddam quickly became known inside the party for his willingness to hurt others to move forward. While Saddam was shaping himself into a political fighter, Sajida lived a quiet, restricted life. The marriage was formalized in 1963. Both of them were 26 years old, but Sajida was emotionally far less prepared for what was coming. By then, Saddam had already taken part in assassinations and violent plots. That same year, the Ba'ath Party briefly took control of Iraq after a coup. During that short period, Saddam and his allies carried out mass arrests and executions of political opponents. Hundreds were killed or disappeared. The government collapsed later that year, and Saddam became a wanted man. The new authorities began hunting down Ba'ath members who had taken part in killings and arrests. Saddam was captured and sent to prison, where he was interrogated and beaten. In 1966, he escaped from prison and vanished back into the underground political world. From that moment on, his life was built around secrecy and fear. Sajida had no choice but to follow him into hiding. She did not return to a normal home. Instead, she lived in temporary houses, safe locations, and relatives' homes, never staying long enough to feel settled. Every knock at the door could mean arrest. Every stranger could be an informer. She learned to stay quiet, avoid attention, and trust no one outside the family circle. Daily life was tense and exhausting. Sajida had to remember different stories depending on where she was staying. She could not use her real name freely. She avoided neighbors and kept contact with outsiders to a minimum. Even small mistakes could expose Saddam's location. In 1964, while living under these conditions, Sajida gave birth to her first child, Uday Hussein. Bringing a child into the world during a time of hiding made her situation even more dangerous. Medical care was limited, movement was restricted, yet expectations did not change. She was expected to protect the child and protect Saddam's secrets at the same time. 2 years later, in 1966, she gave birth to their second son, Qusay Hussein. By then, Saddam was already rebuilding his influence inside the Ba'ath Party from the shadows. Meetings happened in secret, Plans were whispered. Sajeeda was kept away from details, but she understood enough to know that the violence was always close. Fatherhood did not soften Saddam. It made him more demanding. He feared betrayal above everything. Sajeeda was instructed never to speak about his movements, contacts, or plans. Family members were warned to stay silent as well. Raising children under these conditions was brutal. Sajeeda lived with the pressure of keeping them quiet during dangerous moments. Crying could draw attention. Illness could force risky travel. She learned to manage fear every hour of the day. When the Ba'ath Party seized power again in July 1968, Saddam Hussein stepped out of the shadows and into the center of the state. Although Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr became president, Saddam quickly took control of the most important parts of the government. He placed himself in charge of intelligence, internal security, and secret police forces. These agencies had the power to arrest, torture, and kill without warning. Fear became the main tool of rule. Saddam's working life was built on watching others and making sure they were afraid. That way of thinking did not stop when he went home. It followed him into every room of the palaces where his family lived. Sajeeda soon understood that privacy no longer existed. Inside the residences, security was extreme. Guards were changed often, so no one felt comfortable. Servants were watched closely and removed without explanation if they made mistakes or heard too much. People who worked inside the house could vanish overnight. Sajeeda learned not to react or show emotion. Her daily life became tightly controlled. She didn't choose who visited. She didn't choose where they went. Schedules were decided by security needs, not family comfort. Even simple routines depended on Saddam's mood and sense of threat. In public, she was presented as the loyal wife of a powerful man, but behind closed doors, she had no authority. Saddam didn't discuss decisions with her. He didn't explain his plans. He did not accept disagreement. Any opinion outside his own was seen as weakness or disloyalty. In July 1979, Saddam made his final move. He forced President Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr to step down and named himself president of Iraq. Overnight, Sajeeda became the first lady. On paper, this sounded powerful. In real life, it meant almost nothing. Unlike many leaders' wives, Sajeeda had no public role. She did not attend major political events. She didn't give speeches. She did not represent Iraq abroad. Saddam made this decision on purpose. He believed a visible wife was a weakness. He didn't want the public, the party, or foreign leaders asking questions about his personal life. He wanted complete control over his image. Inside the palace, Sajeeda's world became smaller. She was surrounded by guards, but none of them answered to her. Every moment was watched. Every conversation could be heard. Saddam treated his home the same way he treated the country. Trust did not exist. Fear was the system. Sajeeda understood that her safety depended on silence. At the same time, Saddam began reshaping Iraq into a full police state. He expanded intelligence agencies like the Mukhabarat and Amn al-Qas. These groups arrested people at night, interrogated them in secret prisons, and carried out executions without trials. Even senior officials were not safe. Loyalty was tested constantly. This atmosphere followed Saddam home. His behavior changed sharply. He slept very little. He moved between rooms and buildings often. He suspected poison, betrayal, and assassination everywhere. His anger became unpredictable. Small issues triggered violent reactions. Living beside Saddam during this period meant living next to constant tension. Sajeeda had to read his mood carefully. A wrong look or wrong timing could bring punishment, not just for her, but for others around her. By late 1979, Saddam carried out a massive purge of the Ba'ath Party. High-ranking members were accused of treason and executed. Sajida watched men who had eaten at their table disappear forever. As 1980 approached, Saddam became more aggressive and more isolated. He spoke often about enemies, plots, and threats to Iraq. His focus turned outward toward war. And in September 1980, he ordered Iraqi forces to cross into Iran. He believed the war would be short and easy. Instead, it became one of the longest and bloodiest wars of the 20th century. For 8 years, Iraq and Iran fought with tanks, missiles, chemical weapons, and human wave attacks. More than 500,000 people were killed on both sides. The war drained Iraq's money, destroyed families, and poisoned daily life with fear. As the war dragged on, Saddam became colder and more distant. Inside the presidential palaces, security increased immediately. Armed guards multiplied. Entry points were sealed. Every visit was logged. Even family members were searched. The war outside the palace turned the inside into a fortress. Saddam began to see enemies everywhere. Military losses made him furious. Any failure was treated as betrayal. Generals were arrested or executed. This paranoia did not stop at the government. Sajida and the children lived under constant monitoring too. Private talks were no longer private. During the war years, Saddam married Samira Shabandar, a younger woman from a wealthy and influential Baghdad family. This was not done openly at first. The marriage was kept discreet to avoid attention during wartime. But inside the family, the impact was immediate and painful. Samira's arrival shifted everything. Sajida was no longer treated as the central wife. Her position inside the household weakened. She was excluded from decisions, gatherings, and even daily routines. The emotional distance between her and Saddam grew wider. For Sajida, this was a deep humiliation. She had stood beside Saddam before power, during prison escapes, and through political danger. Now, in the middle of the war, she was pushed aside without explanation. She had no way to protest. Speaking out would only make her situation worse. As the war dragged on through the late 1980s, Saddam's son grew up inside a world where violence was normal. They didn't experience a normal childhood. They were raised inside guarded palaces, surrounded by armed men, fear, and absolute power. From a young age, they learned that their last name placed them above the law. Uday, the eldest son, became feared even before the war ended. He was reckless, cruel, and openly violent. He used his father's power to abuse women without punishment. Many women were forced into silence because reporting him meant death. Uday also took control of sports organizations, including the Iraqi Olympic Committee. Athletes who failed or displeased him were beaten, imprisoned, and tortured. Some disappeared. No one could stop him because he was Saddam's son. Qusay followed a different path, but was no less dangerous. He was quieter, more controlled, and more trusted by Saddam. By his early 20s, Qusay was placed in charge of elite military units and internal security forces. These units carried out arrests, executions, and crackdowns. Qusay learned how to rule through fear, exactly as his father had. Sajida watched her sons turn into instruments of terror. As a mother, she had no power to guide them. As a wife, she had no authority to challenge Saddam. He encouraged their behavior. He saw cruelty as strength and fear as loyalty. When his sons acted violently, they were not punished, but rewarded. Any attempt by Sajida to intervene would have been dangerous. Questioning Saddam's influence over the boys could be seen as criticism, and criticism was treated as betrayal. Inside the family, there was no warmth. There were no normal signs of care or emotional support. Showing concern was risky. Expressing sadness was a weakness. When the war finally ended in 1988, Saddam claimed victory, but it had damaged him deeply. His suspicion reached extreme levels. This fear spread through his family like a disease. In August 1990, he ordered the invasion of Kuwait. It was a decision that shocked the world and sealed Iraq's fate. Within months, a U.S.-led coalition launched the Gulf War. In early 1991, Iraq was bombed heavily. Roads, bridges, power plants, and military bases were destroyed. The country was left broken. After the war, Iraq faced strict international sanctions. Food, medicine, and basic supplies became scarce. Ordinary Iraqis suffered deeply. Hunger spread. Hospitals collapsed. Children died from preventable diseases. Inside Saddam's inner circle, the pressure became unbearable. He blamed everyone but himself. Officers were arrested and executed. Advisors disappeared. His wives were pushed completely out of view. They had no role, no voice, and no presence. Sayyida became almost invisible. She was cut off from relatives and old connections. The regime was clearly weakening. Saddam could feel it. And it came true in August 1995, when he faced one of the most personal betrayals of his rule. His two sons-in-law, Hussein Kamal al-Majid and Saddam Kamal al-Majid, fled Iraq with their families and defected to Jordan. These men weren't minor figures. They were part of Saddam's inner circle and had been trusted with some of the most sensitive state secrets, including Iraq's weapons development and military industries. Their escape humiliated Saddam on the world stage. For the first time, people from inside his own family were openly speaking against him. Iraqi state television tried to downplay the event, but inside the palace, panic and rage took over. Saddam saw the defection not just as political betrayal, but as a direct attack on his authority as a father and a ruler. During their time in Jordan, the brothers shared information with foreign officials about Iraq's weapons programs. This damaged Saddam's image and increased international pressure on Iraq. For Saddam, this was unforgivable. Yet instead of responding immediately with violence, he chose a slower and more calculated path. Over several months, Saddam sent messages to the brothers through family channels. He promised safety. He promised forgiveness. He claimed their return would restore family honor. These promises were not delivered through strangers, but through their own relatives, making them feel believable. In February 1996, Hussein Kamal and Saddam Kamal returned to Iraq. Within days, Saddam stripped them of protection. They were isolated, surrounded by armed men, and cut off from any escape. Soon after, both men were killed during what the regime claimed was a tribal revenge attack. In reality, their deaths were ordered and approved at the highest level. Before the killings, Saddam forced his daughters, Raghad and Rana, to publicly divorce their husbands. This was done to erase any family bond before the executions. It was also a public display of control. Even his own daughters were not allowed to choose loyalty or love. For Sayyida, this moment shattered what little remained of family life. She watched her daughters lose their husbands, their security, and their dignity all at once. She couldn't comfort them openly. She couldn't protest. After that, her presence in Saddam's life faded almost completely. She was rarely mentioned, rarely seen, and never acknowledged in official settings. The woman who had been married to him since youth was now invisible. She lived under constant guard, but without status. Saddam's rule during this period became more closed and unstable. International sanctions continued to crush Iraq's economy. Shortages spread across the country. Inside the regime, fear replaced confidence. Saddam trusted fewer people each year. His health began to decline. Reports from insiders described frequent pain, mood swings, and increasing anger. He slept irregularly and relied heavily on a small circle of security officials. Paranoia ruled every decision. For the women connected to him, life became even more restricted. They were no longer useful as symbols of power or stability. Instead, they were risks. Any connection could be exploited by enemies. Any mistake could invite punishment. Sajida understood this better than anyone. As talk of a possible American invasion grew louder in the early 2000s, Saddam focused only on his own survival. He prepared escape routes for himself. No plans were made for his wife. There were no evacuation routes, no guarantees of safety, no concern for what happened to her if the regime collapsed. The invasion began in March 2003, led by the United States and its allies. Airstrikes hit Baghdad day and night. Government buildings were destroyed. Military units collapsed quickly. The power Saddam had built over decades started falling apart in weeks. And he quickly disappeared. He moved between hiding places, safe houses, and underground shelters. He focused only on avoiding capture. He didn't gather his family or issue instructions. Sajida and the other women connected to Saddam were left behind inside a collapsing state. Guards fled, communication broke down. Loyal officials vanished. The system that once controlled everything simply stopped working. When Baghdad fell in April 2003, statues of Saddam were pulled down in the streets. Government offices were looted, prisons were opened. The regime ended almost overnight. At that moment, Saddam's wives were no longer protected by power. They were exposed. Their names alone made them targets. Angry citizens blamed the entire family for years of suffering, poverty, and violence. They could not move freely. Even being recognized could mean death. In December 2003, Saddam was finally captured by U.S. forces near Tikrit. He was found hiding underground, alone. After his capture, Sajida lived quietly outside Iraq. She moved between countries under heavy protection. Her location was kept secret. She lived under assumed safety, but never peace. Her name carried a heavy burden. Even though she held no power, she was still connected to Saddam's crimes in the public mind. Returning to Iraq was impossible. The country was unstable, violence was everywhere. There was no home waiting for her. In July 2003, Uday and Qusay Hussein were killed during a firefight with U.S. forces in Mosul. Sajida lost both sons on the same day. Whatever remained of her family structure collapsed completely. In December 2006, Saddam was executed. With his death, any remaining protection disappeared forever. Sajida was now fully alone. Her life became small and quiet. And on January 9th, 2015, she died at the age of 77. Her death passed quietly. No crowds, no public mourning. She had spent her entire life beside one of the most powerful men in the Middle East. And in the end, she left the world with nothing but silence.